Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Tiina Koljonen, coming from VTT Technical Research from Finland. In Finland, it's already afternoon, so I guess that it will be also afternoon or even evening somewhere else. We will have 4 excellent presentations in this session. It's about energy systems modeling for policy formulation. And first, we will have Alessandro Chiodi. Please have your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. Let me share the presentation. Here we go. Okay, so I'm glad to be here to basically present to the sub-community some, let's say, updates on the progress regarding the Paris Reinforced project. I would start first of all saying, okay, what is the Paris Reinforced project? Really briefly, it is an European funded project with a duration of 3 years that started about one and a half years ago. So we are basically in the middle of the project, and is involving 18 different partners, mainly European, but also some extra-European partners. Here you can see basically the list of the partners directly involved in the project, which are involving several universities across Europe, some institutions, and some private entities, as for example, our case. And is covering a quite diverse geographical area across, let's say, the globe. What is meant the Paris Reinforced project? Well, basically, this consortium of institutions, universities, and companies, and so on, are a group of people which are working with several types of modeling tools. And here you will see a kind of synthetic description about the key modeling tools which are used within the consortium. And they are basically covering different types of models. So starting from general equilibrium model to partial equilibrium, to energy system models, sectoral models, and so on, and also with different geographical scopes. So starting from models which have a scope, a global scope, some other which have a more detailed scope for European countries or for extra-European countries, considering, for example, major emitting countries and so on. So here you see that there's a kind of diverse subset of different modeling tools within the consortium. In particular, myself and all the team here at T4SMA, we are basically involved in the activities related to 3 times models, which are basically the TIAM model, which we are developing some work and analysis in conjunction with the Imperial Grantham Institute. And then also we are working with the EU times in order to deliver some work and analysis at European level, and with the times CAC, which CAC means Central Asian and Caspian regions. Now, in terms, let's say, of the workflow of this project, basically, as I said, we are in the middle of the project. The key scope of this stage is basically to provide some results analysis or some runs, both at the global level and at regional level. So both at national, at European level and extra-European level. As you can see here, basically, the initial idea was basically to start with some global runs and then following by a kind of an interlinkage with some regional analysis. It was decided as well, anyway, to try to anticipate a bit the analysis of regional scenarios. So we can say that that the analysis between global and regional scenarios actually started a bit in parallel, and they are progressing in parallel. As you can see here, then in the future step will be, okay, having a series of possible interlinkages between the different geographical scales in order to have a proper communication between the different tools. An important element of this work plan is represented by the box here below, that is basically the role of stakeholders. Of course, the role of stakeholders in the project was designed in order to have a series of events with stakeholders, in order to have in all the different phases of the project some comments and elicitators about the preferences, the choices of the scenario runs, and so on. Of course, there have been some small delays related to the last period with the COVID-19, but anyway, I think the formatting of the stakeholder engagement have been changed. The approach, of course, will be more online meetings and these kind of things, but there have been several events, and in particular, in the next semester, there will be a set of next events that will try to strengthen this relation between the modeling community in this project and the stakeholders. So regarding basically the step here, so the interlinkage between the global level models and the regional scenario models. Well, we can say that basically the key activities and in terms of the methodologies of delivering this scenario is basically, okay, we have a large set of models with different assumptions, different paradigms, and so on. What we were trying to do is, first of all, to create a common ground. So at least in terms of the key exogenous variable, try to align the information between the different models. And on the second side, the design of a common scenario protocol, at least for the starting point, having something that is in common to all the subset of models. On the output side, of course, then the outcome of the different models will be used for starting intercomparison and learning by the different results about common findings and differences between the different models. So regarding, for example, the first element here, I'm aware that this graph is not so clear in this slide, but I put the link in which you can go and explore some information about the key activities that were done in order to try to harmonize all the key different variables that could be, for example, in terms of fuel prices, international fossil fuel prices, or GDP growth, and even at technological level, trying to align in some assumption regarding technologies and so on. The other key element of harmonization have been the scenario design. It was decided basically to set up and design a set of reference scenarios which is common to all the different scales and models. The idea of the reference scenario is to set up basically the starting point of all the forthcoming analysis during the project. And basically it will decide to define primarily two main reference scenarios. In the project are called where are we heading scenarios. The first one basically focusing on the set of current policies available at the national and regional levels, while the second one is basically related to the national determined contribution set by the country. Okay, this is the general framework of these two main scenarios. Of course, given the fact that we have a lot of models, different scales and so on, then there's the possibility of setting up several variants to these scenarios in order to better capture the specificness of the geographical scope, the policy ambition, and so on. So for example, in the graph here, you see a simplified schema of the Times CAC protocol, in which basically the two main scenarios, the current policies and the NDC scenario is complemented, for example, by a number of possible sensitivity scenario related to some of the main uncertainties. For example, some of the drivers that are driving the model, or for example, the uncertainty about the international fuel price, which is particularly important for some regions that are net exporter of fossil fuel, for example. Another specific case, for example, is the European case. Of course, the European case is, let's say, a kind of different, let's say, landscape compared to other regions, because there are already a kind of high-level ambition in terms of climate mitigation, and there are kind of as well-established set of existing policies. So, for example, even still within this main design, it was decided, for example, to try to explore, for example, different approach. First of all, in terms of an approach which was called backcasting, a target-oriented approach. So saying, okay, at EU level, we are setting up some high-level targets. What will happen and how these different targets will be distributed across the different regions, the different sectors, and so on. The other approach, the second approach to compare with, was a kind of cold forecasting approach, a policy-oriented approach in which we try to represent as much as possible the national policy ambition. So from the bottom of the different member states, as specified, for example, by the latest publication in terms of the national energy climate plans and so on. So the idea will be to compare these two effects in order to better capture the specificness of the European landscape. Then, of course, the step that is actually in place, and we have been working on this in the last few months and it's still going on, is now in terms of the intercomparison of the different results. First of all, for try to fine-tune and debug the different results, but as well, at the end, the outcome should be, okay, we should try to improve the robustness of our analysis and possibly also expand the scope of the results, because different models have different strengths that could be used for analyzing policy, different policy details with different level of detail, of granularity and so on. Now, of course, we don't have to forget the key role about this step and the next step, which is represented by the stakeholder engagement. The main idea here is basically that the consortium will, okay, set up a protocol for scenario exploration, provide some results, but then basically the key information, the key input should be provided by the stakeholder. So try to match up what the model can deliver with what the key stakeholder, the key policymaker would like to know, in order to try to enhance the results that we have from the different model, and possibly also reframe the scope of the different analysis. Okay, this is the main purpose, and this is the purpose of the different stakeholder meetings that have been done in the past few months. In the last period, there have been done some, for example, in India, for Central Asia. And in the next semester in particular, there will be several workshops at EU level, in particular from Italy, UK, Greece, and other candidate countries. Now, in terms of, as well, within this stakeholder meeting, we are trying to develop also some communication method in order to try to match up what is the very granular outputs of the model with some, we can call it more simplified method in order to enhance the communication between key stakeholders, policymakers, and modelers. And this was done, for example, try to create some dashboard with some KPIs and key indicators to get some direct feedback during the key meetings. Or the other key work done during in the consortium is, for example, the preparation of a platform called I Am Paris platform, which collects all the key information about the model. And actually this platform is meant also to try to be open to other models outside the consortium. So also models that are not part of the Paris Reinforced Consortium, if they would, they could they contribute to this platform. And the idea here is to have both the documentation side, but also the results visualization tools of all the analyses that are delivered by this model. And also try to differentiate between the different possible stakeholder and interested party that we have. So more, let's say, scientific outcomes with more details, and maybe some more simplified approach in order for people maybe less used to explore subset of result scenarios from models. Now, I would like to conclude my brief presentation, my brief update about basically some of the key activities, for example, that we have been doing in the past few months at European level. In particular, we are working with the EU Times model, which probably you are all well aware originates from the open source models, the JRC EU Times model. And basically, key work have been, for example, to try to update the model with key new output, migrate it into the VEDA 2.0 platform, and creating a kind of a dynamic dashboard in order to explore the different results. So this is, for example, a snapshot of some of the initial runs for these these scenarios. And also there have been some analysis in terms of benchmarking the analysis across other European projection, other models, and key technology roadmap. So concluding, the idea, of course, now was to basically set up an architecture and a structure that should be the starting point of several multiple exploration in the future. Of course, now the most interesting part in terms of results will come out in the next few months, and in which we would like also to start to explore, for example, new scenario relating to, for example, impacts of COVID-19 in the delivery of key energy policies, or impacts in the new reinforced ambition at EU level, and as well try to move towards some country-specific focal analysis, also driven by the specific events that will be delivered in the specific region. Okay, this is basically it. I'm aware that I'm running off of time, so let me know if you have any question.
So thank you very much, Alessandro, for the very interesting and important presentation when we are talking about implementation and linking different models. There isn't any open questions in the chat, but maybe I will myself ask a short question, because you had in your slides that indicated that you are like harmonizing a lot of inputs for models. I'm just wondering that, because we know that it's very, very time consuming. Do you think that it's really worth of whole work to harmonize the inputs? Do you expect that you will really improve the scenario results, as an example, compared to the efforts that everybody is doing? And then the second thing is that also have you been looking at the base year? So how does the base year look if you look at as an example, energy balance for the demand sectors?
Okay, yeah, I think you are mentioning two very interesting points. Well, the first one, actually, we had a lot of discussion within the consortium because anyone has his own ideas and so on. Of course, I think it's worth at least to try to harmonize as much as possible some of the key drivers that in particular will drive the future, so the results over the horizon. So of course it was agreed that, for example, some key drivers, as for example economical drivers, or let's say international outlooks in terms of, for example, of fossil fuel price and so on, was some of the key elements to be harmonized, and generally it's quite easy also to harmonize. Then going much more in details, for example, on harmonizing all the subset of technologies and so on, I think is a bit more time consuming on the one side, and also could be also not really very helpful in terms of the outcome. So it's something that primarily was some information were shared and tried to benchmark, but without really having a full harmonization, because we don't believe that, given the different scope of the different models, a full complete harmonization would have made sense on that aspect. Regarding the calibration, of course, this is part of, let's say, the phase in which we are comparing all the different outputs that we have in the results. Actually, there are some reporting works and actually some papers now currently on preparation on basically the intercomparison of the key results between the different models. So this type of work for sure have been done, but I would say that not so much in terms of the calibration of the base year, because it should also be considered that the different models sometimes could have different base years and different starting points. So I think most of the focus, of course, have been on benchmarking the starting point, but much more also in terms of the dynamic and what's happening in response to the different policy that we are implemented in the different scenarios.
Thank you very much. We need to move on. So next we will have James Glynn from University of Cork. So please, James, start your presentation.
Thanks, Tina. Share my screen. Can you see that okay, Tina?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
That's fine.